So hey everybody, welcome to Arizona Drone. My name is Rich.
And I'm Greg Riverdio.
And we're doing a special talk today for Arizona Drone Talk because Greg had gotten a document forwarded to him earlier today that he sent along to me, and it's already making the rounds on the internet on several different drone groups on Facebook, and we wanted to actually talk about it today. So we've both done a read through. And so the document I'm talking about, it's a draft for discussion only. It's a Tort Law Relating to Drones Act. So this document was created by the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. So number one, before we get into what they were writing, big question is, so who are these guys? So I just want to give a quick rundown. So the Uniform Law Commission, also called the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, is a nonprofit American unincorporated association. Established in 1892, the ULC aims to provide U.S. states with well-researched drafted legislation, to bring clarity and stability to critical areas of statutory laws across jurisdictions. Big mouthful. So this is a nonprofit that helps draft what could be potential bills for the House or the Senate.
Nonprofit.
Yeah, and nonprofit, yeah. So they have put out this new document, and it's kind of relevant to drone pilots. And this is something that we've been circling around now since I got my commercial license last year, what to do with airspace for drone pilots and the big concerns from people about privacy.
Yeah. So to go back just a little bit, the FAA, when drones started to become a little bit more popular, the FAA decided to allocate the first 400 feet of airspace to drone use, which wasn't really used by any of the manned aircraft. 500 feet is really as low as you want to go when you fly with manned aircraft, unless you're taking off and landing. And so the FAA decided to use that first 400 feet in order for UAS to operate.
Yep, and so there's a consistent theme going on because last year people were talking about the Feinstein bill, but in the end, we keep coming to this 200-foot rule. So this draft here starts up with talking about aerial trespass. So right now, the FAA controls anything from 0 on up. And with the major concerns about trespassing with drones, we've seen several different documents last year in Congress talking about some of this, that there's a concern of privacy for landowners. And so I get that, and I definitely don't want to bother people. I don't want to go flying where people don't want me. As a commercial pilot, I want to work for clients who have me out to their property to do specific jobs for them. Per se, aerial trespass. So a person operating an unmanned aircraft is liable when the person without consent intentionally causes the unmanned aircraft to enter airspace below 200 feet above the surface. What this draft document that they want to hand off clearly to somebody in Congress is that drone pilots need to fly between 200 and 400 feet, and anything lower over private property is trespass.
Essentially, anything from the surface to 200 is going to be reserved to certain people because there are some exemptions in the document. Talk about the government. They talk about anything that has to do with an emergency situation. So firefighters, emergency medical supplies, and a lot of different things related to emergencies. So get ready to say goodbye to surface to 200. Actually, hopefully not, but we've seen these bills before. They've come and gone, gladfully, but this may not be the case for this one. So we have to be aware of what's going on and what the intent is for all these bills. Now, I think they hide behind the cover of saying that this is for privacy. This is for citizens' privacy. Now, I don't know if you've ever taken a picture from 200 feet up with a drone and with a wide-angle lens on it. You can't see anything. It's not.
People become pixels.
Yes, exactly.
So we've heard about this last year. We heard about the Feinstein bill. So there was something going on in the Senate and there was something going on in the House. This seems like another new document kind of leaning the same way. And one of the things that really caught me was little item D. Above the altitude set forth, any existing aerial trespass law of this state applies. So reading this to me is saying, in addition to what they're putting out here and suggesting, 200 feet above ground to 400 feet above ground isn't trespassing. If each state has their own independent rules about trespass, let's say Arizona says, hey, 0 to 400, we consider that trespass. That's really going to kill things if every state or every locality gets to adopt their own rules on top of something like this.
And I don't know how the FAA is going to take to this, but the FAA right now is in charge of all airspace because they're in control. And if you think about it, it makes sense because they need to have control over the airspace because they're the one providing a service. Now, if you're a Part 107 operator, you know what controlled airspace mean, and controlled airspace means that there's going to be a service provided, usually a traffic separation. And you can't have traffic separation if you don't have access to the airspace. If you don't have control over the airspace, it's not controlled airspace anymore. Now, a lot of areas have controlled airspace starting at the surface, and the FAA can't lose access to that. Now, in most part of the country, it starts at 1,200 feet, and anything below 1,200 feet is uncontrolled. But this could be trouble. I can see the FAA not being all excited about this kind of thing, which may be a savior for us.
One of the things, let's think about the Department of Transportation and the FAA. Could you imagine needing a driver's license for every state you pass through? Could you imagine needing to register your vehicle for every town you pass through? With the little clause above the altitude set forth and then the state applies, that's really concerning to me. So the whole reason that there's a Department of Transportation is for uniform standards. Because otherwise a tractor trailer couldn't go from New Hampshire to California. It would be too prohibitive trying to learn the laws of every single state. If something like this comes out and in addition localities or states get to also tack in their own things, the rules for flying in Prescott could end up being different than the rules for flying in Prescott Valley or Chino Valley.
And there is some history with that. Some cities have been trying to do this and regulate the own airspace, but they've lost in court every time so far until we have something like this that passes, and then it's not good. So
just remember, this is a draft document. This is not legislation or anything, so it's not passing or anything soon. But I think the most interesting point is this is so consistent with some of the other items that we've seen over the last year. And they got a real fixation on 200 feet, but they've got the fixation on 200 feet based on the FAA's own governance over the years.
Yeah, well, if you look at a sectional chart, you'll see that only obstacles that are above 200 feet AGL are mapped. And so what they're saying is, so far, the FAA hasn't really worried about the airspace below 200 because they don't even bother mapping things that are less than 200 feet tall. That's kind of their reasoning if you read the language in there. Now, I think what we need to discuss is what the effect is going to be on the industry if this happens. So if you're a realtor and or if you're working for a realtor and you have to take pictures of a house, then you're likely going to do it below 1,200. If you've tried to take...
You mean 200?
What did I say?
1,200.
Oh, 200, yeah. You're definitely going to be below 200. And if you've tried to take any kind of pictures of houses from over 200 feet, you're going to get the whole neighborhood. So it works well to do a golf course shot, but not to do a property shot. So this is out right there.
Now, here's a really neat thing. So what Greg was just saying, if you're shooting above 200, you're probably going to get the neighborhood. Well, there's additional language in this document where property owners, if they didn't give their consent for electronic imaging or video, that there could be a tort law response to that too, because they didn't want their property photographed by you and you've invaded their privacy there. So further along in the document was my second big concern. You know, as a professional photographer for years, I understand doing model licenses, I understand doing property releases. But now, if a client were to hire me to come out to photograph or video their property because maybe they're selling it or they just want to take a look at their land, and I accidentally get Bob's house in there down the way, Bob could complain if he saw the commercial production of the images or video. Talk about an industry killer.
The reason we wanted to bring this to you and we want you to read this document and give us your point of view is because we think that this could be potentially very damaging to the industry, and not only to the commercial industry but also to the hobbyist industry, where people would not be allowed to fly at lower altitude. Now, especially if you're a new pilot, flying at a low altitude with keeping line of sight and staying close is extremely important. So we want to bring it up to you. We're definitely not in favor of this, and we would like to see some changes. Now, the problem with these documents, just like a lot of rules in aviation and a lot of rules everywhere, is that they just come up and then they get voted, and you don't really get a say in what happens. So.
Yeah, and we don't know where this document is going, but if you've been in the drone industry or been watching for even a little while, you've seen more of this popping up. So we wanted to put this up today as an advisory. Hey, there's a new draft document out there that seems very consistent with several other things we've heard over the past year. Bottom line is we all need to be very aware of what's going on. And so beyond just the trespass, there's also a whole piece about electronic media, film, and photography that could also impact small commercial operators as well. As one quick example, I did construction flight last year and did an orbit over a new house being constructed. That orbit was going over other homes with the image being shot directly at the building being built. I wouldn't be able to do that in a tight packed community where new construction is going on if something like this were actually to, end up becoming law.
So you'd have to go door to door asking for permission, and if people are not home, then you don't have permission, so it could be trouble. Yeah. So leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Maybe you have a different perspective, maybe you read it differently than we do. We're open for suggestion. We'd love a discussion, a healthy discussion about this, and see where it goes. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, like it and subscribe to our channel, and you'll get a lot more of those.
Yep, we'll be keeping you guys up to date. When we see new news, if we've got time to put something together, we'll be putting it together.